Darkness rises as you make your way up the stairs of the crystal altar of unknown power. You see the sorcerer readying his spells, prepared to attack. A mist settles upon the altar. Roll for initiative.
What's up guys, it's Nick here at Fantasy Forge Miniatures, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a floating crystal. So let's get crafting.
So we're going to start off this build with some 2-inch XPS foam, and this is just insulation foam. And we're going to just draw out kind of the base of how we want our crystal altar to be shaped. And then we're going to take off the guard, and we're just going to use the Proxon to cut out that shape out of the foam here for our base to be structured. So you can see here I'm going to nick it a little bit here, but this is just an example of how you can just work mistakes into your builds, and you know, it's supposed to be a jagged rock. So this is the base shape. Now we're going to just grab something circular here, and we want our top to be top of the altar to be, you know, perfectly circular. So we're just going to trace that out onto our base there. And now I'm grabbing the handheld foam cutter here, and that's just a wire that heats up and then it cuts through the foam. And we are going to just get some kind of jagged shapes. We're just blocking out, you know, the base structure of our base. And we're kind of, you know, wobbling the wire to get kind of a bit of an uneven, kind of jagged rock. You can see there I'm following the circle to make sure that, you know, I don't cut too far in and we get a nice, you know, circular top to it while making it nice and jagged on the outside. And this is just part of the shaping phase. We're going to get to some more details after. Now I'm just cutting a perfect slant here where we're going to put our stairs up, so it kind of helps you get the cadence. Then we're just going to grab a box cutter, start cutting in those stairs. Now you're going to want to be careful with the knife, very sharp to get through the foam, so just be careful as you're doing any work with the box cutter here. And we're just going to speed it up here, and we're just cutting out the stairs up to our crystal altar here. So I'm not worried about too many jagged edges because, you know, it is it's kind of like a rocky stair. So just cutting in that last stair to the very top, and then we're going to start just carving it up a bit. And here I will say again, be careful with the knife because it can kind of pull and tear, but we're just going to start ripping off pieces of the altar to get a nice rocky texture. And what's really nice about XPS foam is that when you cut and tear it, it naturally starts to look like stone. So yeah, we're just carving it up, and you can just drag the knife and slice it up. However, just maintaining that nice circle on the top, and we're just weathering up the stairs a little bit here, and yeah, adding some extra texture. Now I always have a model to make sure that my models are looking properly visually. We're grabbing another piece of XPS foam here, and we're going to start cutting out those pillars. So I'm just kind of sketching out, you know, the size and shape of how we want those pillars to look. And then we're just going to cut them out with the handheld hot wire cutter and get those shapes and start shaping them into what we want it to look like. So here we're just putting them on there, and now we're kind of tapering them down. I'm just using the hot wire for this. You can use a knife for sure. I find that the handheld gets a little smoother of cuts, and that's kind of what we want a little bit. So always just kind of basing them on the model there. And now I'm cutting out a notch so that it can kind of fit around the circle. I found it was cutting too much into the space of the altar. So here I'm just kind of shaving down an area where I'm going to attach that pillar there, and it kind of hangs off of the piece. And I like the look I got there. So you can always just shape them down and carve them up how you would like. So now we're going to start duplicating them. I'm going to have 4 on mine. You can do however many you like, and just using the exact same method, just grabbing that hot wire and tapering them down and then carving them up to get that kind of curved pillar shape. So now we're just going to make 4 more of those for the 4 corners of this altar that we're making here, and just using that hot wire to carve out the shapes and then just placing them on to get kind of a feel for how the build's coming together. Now we want it to be rock, so we're grabbing some tin foil, and we are going to start texturing our pillars to look a little bit more like stone. So crumpling up a ball of tin foil and then just pressing it onto the pillars is going to give us a great stone texture on top of the carved look. So I like the finish that I got on the final product here, so we're just going to texture up all 4 pillars as well as the base itself here. So just getting that top looking a little bit more like stone by just rolling the tinfoil all over the base, the sides, and the stairs. So now I'm going to start carving out the crystal out of the XPS foam here. So I'm just kind of giving an oblong shape of the crystal that I want, and just again carving it out with the hot wire foam cutter here, and we're just getting that nice tapers along the outside, and we're kind of doing the base structure here with the hot wire, and then we're going to move to the box cutter to get more of those shapes. Now I end up recreating the crystal again because I wasn't happy with how it came out. The knife actually started to pull. It wasn't sharp enough. I should have replaced it, but it started to give some jagged edges, so I remake it later. But now we're just cutting areas for the pillars to attach along the altar, and I'm just grabbing a toothpick, breaking it in half, and this is just going to help us for positioning the pillars. I'm going to stick one end into the pillar, and then that'll help us just place them down without hot gluing them, because we like to just kind of plan out the build a little bit. So it just kind of holds them in place, as well as when we go to hot glue them, it's just extra support. So we're getting the pillars in place, and it's really starting to take shape now. We've got our crystal here. We're just kind of holding it there for reference, but we're going to use a little piece of wire here to hold the crystal off the ground and give a little bit of illusion of floating here, just to give us a reference as we're building this. If you want to leave it at this method for making it look like it's floating, you can, but we're going to go for another method that's going to be a lot more fun and look a lot more realistic. But this is still a great way to make the illusion of floating. So here I'm just carving up some little pieces of crystal that are going to be floating around it. So I wanted to add a little bit more depth to the crystal, so I thought this would be a cool way to add some more in. So we're just carving up this XPS foam into a bit of a crystal shape here, and a couple other ones. You can add as many as you like. And then we're just going to be attaching them to the main crystal here with little pieces of wire that we're just sticking into the side, and then pushing on the crystals onto those wires and just having them slightly off gives this really cool illusion. It hides the wire pretty well. If you're looking for the wire, you'll see it, but it does a great job of creating that floating effect that we're going for with these crystals. So we're just going to place it there on the main wire, and we're going to get kind of a feel for the whole piece here. It's really starting to take shape, and liking the progress. So now we're going to pop off the pillars, and we're going to start adding in some more details onto the platform of the altar. So we're using, again, just some kind of circular reference to draw a circle in the center, and then we're using other objects to draw circles to kind of get that symmetry. I'm putting the pillars down on here because I want the carving to kind of work around the pillars, so I'm just kind of penciling out an outline. And then we're just starting to add some stone lines here. These are just reference. We're going to be carving them in here in a sec, but here we go. We're just drawing all kind of cobblestone shapes into the foam, and yeah, kind of going for an off cobblestone look with this. So now we're going to take our hot wire foam cutter here, and we're going to change the tip. We're going to use more like a soldering iron end that came with it, and we're just going to carve in the grout lines of the stones, and we're going to create the shapes in there. You can use a pen if you don't have this tool, and just kind of cut the lines in however you'd like to, but this is the method I went there. So we're just going to start tracing all over the lines that we drew down, and we're going to get some fun time lapse here of drawing all the grout lines. Now I'm showing you a little trick that I learned here. I have a turntable. If you don't have one, you can still just do it by hand, but I have a little like hand turntable here, and I'm just using that to carve in those perfect circles around the center. And then we're just finishing off the rest of the stonework here, and that's looking great. So now we're just going to texture it all a bit, rough it up a bit. It looks a little bit, intentionally cut, but now with the tin foil, we're just adding a little bit of texture that kind of holds the whole piece together. Just doing a little bit on the stairs there, and now I wanted to add a little bit more detail to the altar piece here, so I'm taking some XPS foam again, and we're just doing the same thing as the crystals, and we're just carving it up, and we're going to be adding these kind of teeth edging around it, kind of like the smaller versions of the pillars, just little claws. So we're just carving up some XPS foam here, and then we're just going to be sticking them all around the outside. So we're just going to do the same thing and duplicate it a bunch of times, and I'm putting 2 teeth between each gap, and then we're going to be just attaching them the same way with some toothpicks. So we're just breaking toothpicks in half, sticking one end in the claw, and then just placing it around the outside of the build here. So we're going to repeat that again all the way around, and we're going to get this great kind of claw grip that's looking around the altar there. So that's looking pretty sweet. And I think now it's time to attach everything. So we're going to start hot gluing. We're going to put some hot glue in the toothpick hole and around the attachment there. And we're just going to squish it down and hold it into place. And then we're just going to repeat this for all 4 pillars. And then when it comes to the teeth, I had forgotten to texture them, so we're just going to rub some, pushing some tin foil onto them to get that stone texture, and then glue them down the exact same way. So we're just going to do that for every single one. Texture, glue, and this piece is going to start becoming a lot more solid here. So just hot gluing on some more teeth there, and that's looking great. So now, like I said, I wasn't happy with the crystal. It was looking a little bit rough. So I got a new blade on the X-Acto knife here, and we're just cutting down. You can see it's getting some great smooth lines there. Looks a lot more clean cut like a crystal should. And I did the exact same thing. I created some more smoother exterior crystals there, and same way we just attached them with the wire there. And I think that's looking a lot better, kind of differentiates them from the stone. So now there is still some gaps between where the teeth went on and the texture. So we're grabbing some dried X here, and we're just going to start putting that drywall patch basically into all the cracks of the pillars here, and then just kind of smoothing it out. The plaster gives a great kind of stone texture on its own, so it kind of blends in. And we're just kind of scraping in there, and it's going to get a nice hold on those pillars. And we're just smoothing out with the fingers how we, what we think looks good here, and just kind of lathering on. It has a hard time sticking, but we get it to stay, and once it dries, it holds really great. So we're just going to start slathering that on all of the joints to try to smooth it out a bit. So while the plaster is drying, we're going to paint the crystal here, and I'm going to base coat by mixing some Mod Podge matte with some black paint, and this is going to be our base coat, our sealer coat for the entire build. So there's the black paint. We're just going to add a little bit in to the Mod Podge, and it's definitely going to harden up our styrofoam and make it a lot more durable here. So we're just going to mix those two together, and we're just going to start painting the crystal black. Now we are going to put a metallic, it's called Purple Flash by Folkart Color Shift. And the best thing for any metallic paint is to have a black base. It's really going to help the reflectiveness here. So we're going to grab some of that Folkart Shift Purple Flash, and you can see here already it's looking amazing against that black. And we're just going to get a nice coat of Purple Flash all over this crystal. Now I'm just grabbing a heat gun to just speed up the drying time here, because we want to paint the entire thing. There's no place to hold it, so I do that so I don't get paint all over. And then we're just going to paint the base. Now as I do more coats of paint on this, I put more paint on the bottom to get this nice gradient from more of a pink at the bottom, because as you add more layers it gets a little more pink, and then darker at the top, so nice gradient. So we put on there, and I think the crystal is looking really good. I'm really liking it. So like I said, we're just going to take that same formula of Mod Podge and black paint and coat the entire piece in this now that the plaster has dried. So a fun time lapse of coating every inch in black Mod Podge. Now black is a great base color because any areas that you can't reach will be black and kind of look shadow. So that's exactly what you want. So now we've got some wrought iron paint by Folkart here, and we're just going to coat over the entire piece with this. I find this color has kind of just mostly black, but just kind of a sickly greeny tinge to it. So we're gonna grab some purple here and some medium gray, and we're gonna start mixing up kind of a stone color here. So I was experimenting with adding purple in here because the crystal was purple. And I start adding it on, and I was like, I don't want to make the piece too purple, so I'm just experimenting with colors here. I grab coffee latte paint here, and I kind of mix it in, and I get some warmer tones because yellow and purple are nice complementary colors, and I start adding that in. Now, this might look a little bit aggressive, but we're going to be adding a wash that is going to really tone down these colors. So to give that kind of natural variant, we're just adding some colors here. And I added a little bit gray to get some variation in the different stone colors here to get a nice bit of, kind of realism in there. And then I'm going over here with kind of a darker gray and just dry brushing and starting to build up the highlights on the entire piece here. And we're just doing a fairly heavy dry coat. And now we're just using a medium gray, and again we're doing another dry brushing, and we're building up those highlights and letting that texture that we worked on really start to shine. And you can see here the pillar just starts to pop along those edges, and we get a nice cut stone look to the piece. And you can just kind of build up your highlights by going with lighter and lighter colors and a drier and drier brush here. So we're starting to go over the stone flat areas here, and just being pretty liberal with it. Now the camera cut out, so unfortunately we didn't get the wash, but all I did was just brush on the wash, which is just India ink, Flow Aid, and some water. There's lots of YouTube videos out there on how to make washes. I'll probably make my own. But yeah, so like I said, really toned it down. Now we're just going over with a nice light gray highlighting here. As the wash really toned things down, we're just bringing back some of those highlights along the very edges, and a very dry brush to bring out that texture again, and really liking the look here. And now we're just going to put the crystal back on to give the whole effect. And really, you can stop here if you like with the crystal giving a nice illusion with the wire here, but we're going to keep going. I'm just painting black onto the grout lines of some of the interior stones here. And this is because we're going to be painting purple flash here onto the base to give kind of like a glowing magical effect to the altar area. So just on top of that black we painted, we're going to go along with some purple flash, and we're going to give kind of an illusion that, the cracks are starting to glow with whatever magic is in this crystal. So just going along each line around the circle area here. And I'm only doing one coat just so that it's a nice thin layer so it's not as intense as the crystal. So now we're just going to dry brush some of that purple flash onto the areas around it as if it's glowing. So just doing a nice light dry brushing, and we're gonna just try to paint some of that light effect into the altar area here. Now we're also going to be painting up the pillars here as if the light is glowing from the crystal. It would be hitting on the inside sides of the pillars. So we're just going to add in a pretty healthy amount of the purple flash, and we're going to get this really nice glowing effect. And the fact that the stone is dark and the purple is reflective, we get this really great light effect. And now I'm just lightly dry brushing as you get farther out, just a lighter dry brush to create the intensity of the glow as it diminishes. And then right underneath there, we're going to do some really intense, almost straight up purple flash because it's right below the crystal. So we're going to put the crystal on there. It's looking great. And now we've got some chain from Michaels we have. We're gonna start making this thing float without the wire. So right now we're just gonna start measuring out how long of a piece of chain we need. And we're gonna make sure that it has enough slack to have a little bit of a droop. We don't want a straight chain to it. We want to get kind of a loose effect so that it looks like it's floating on its own. So we're gonna grab some pliers there and just snip off where we had marked with our fingers, and then we're going to start attaching it, but first we need to attach it to the crystal. So we're going to cut off a little piece of wire here. I'm going to grab some smaller kind of needle nose pliers and just bend that into kind of a little bit of a U-loop there, and that's going to be what holds the chain to the crystal. So I did it backwards on this first one here. You'll see the better method is going to be in the second chain that I add. But what I do here is I attach it to the crystal and just kind of mark out where I'm going to put the link. But now I attach the chain to the pillar. So we're going to put a little dab of hot glue there, and then we're just going to press the chain in there. We're going to have a little bit of slack hanging down. And we're just going to push that onto the little hot glue dab we have there. And then we're just going to loop it around and see how much slack we want to have around there. And then we're just going to grab the hot glue again, add another little dab on top of it, and it's going to make it look like a tied chain. We don't actually have to tie the chain into a knot. We get the same effect when we put the chain on here. So all we do is just make sure it's tight, and then just press that right into the hot glue. Now this little extra bit is going to be what we're attaching to the crystal, and we're getting a nice sag there. So we're going to grab our little link thing that we made, and we're just going to pull it out of the crystal, link it onto the chain, and now we're going to attach it back. Now what's really nice is that little wire is holding up the crystal, so we know where it wants to be. So we're just going to attach it there where it looks good, and we can see we get a nice droop. We're going to adjust the crystal and make sure it's right where we want it to be. And now here is the magic sauce. We're going to grab some crazy glue. So the chain is loose right now. It wouldn't hold up on its own, but all you do is just take some crazy glue and you start dripping it along the chain. It will run down the chain and start to solidify it, basically holding it right in place while still looking like it's still a loose chain. So really that's the magic sauce, and you can put a healthy amount on there and then let it dry. We're going to add a second one here on the other side, and you can see I'm attaching it first, putting the chain link in first, attaching it to the crystal, putting the dab of hot glue, and then pressing the chain. And this is a much easier method for attaching the crystals than doing to the pillar first. So again, we're just doing the same thing, dab of hot glue, touching in the chain, looping it around, and then we're just going to add some more crazy glue. You're going to want to make sure you get a good amount on the chain connecting to the link as well as to the pillar, and then just let the crazy glue dry. And here's the real test. We're going to clip that wire out from underneath of it, and it falls away, and the crystal now really looks like it's floating on its own. So that really is a satisfying and fun effect. Now you can put on as many chains as you want. It works with 1, 2, as many as you like, but I put 4 on mine here just to give it a full effect of the 4 pillars holding it up. So that is really what is going to make this thing look like it's floating. The fact that the chains look slack, but the crazy glue keeps them rigid. So now we're just going to grab some the Painter Army's little tufts of grass, and just add some nice little details in there. Trying to stick them in where I think maybe some cracks would occur for grass to sprout out of. And it's the little details that really make it shine. So now we're going to grab some blended turf flocking, and we're just going to dump some into a cup, and then we're going to grab some white glue, just dollar store white glue, and pour it into the cup. And then we're going to add a little bit of water to this mixture just to keep it a little bit more malleable. And then we're just going to stir this all together, and we're going to get kind of a moss mixture that we can then just start scraping onto edges. And we just want to get a little bit of a extra detail into this. So we're just kind of letting the popsicle scrape and let the flocking stick in the recesses of the altar there, just to add some texture. And then once we're satisfied with the amount of flocking, we're going to grab some, again, dollar store pebbles. Really cheap, affordable way to make terrain. We're going to dump a couple out onto the lid just so that we have some choice. And then we're just going to hot glue a few of those onto some random areas where we think there'd be a couple of stones lying around. And just using the tweezers because they're real small. And we're just hot glue and stones and getting those on there. And really loving how these extra little details make the piece come together. So they were a bit bold. The tan stuck out a little too much. So all I'm doing is taking the same wash that I used on the build and just putting a little coat over the stones so they're just a little toned down. And here we have the final product.
And that's it, guys. That's how you make a floating crystal. Now, I'd love to see what you guys come up with. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer them. If you found this video helpful, like, share, subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, guys. And as always, keep on crafting.